Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So we got a lot going on today. We got an early start because it's supposed to be super hot today. It is Thursday morning. We are going to work on getting these approaches formed out here. We've got this one formed, but we have a lot of rebar we got to get put in there. We got to drill into that wall and get some rebar put in so that we can wire this rebar mat to it. Got the one to do on that side. We got to finish compaction on that part of the rail spur right there, and then some backfill. So let's get started this morning. Okay, so here's the blueprint of the rail pit. So here's a side view of what it looks like, where this is the rail, this is the I-beam, these are the pockets that I showed you in the other video. So right here is our approaches that we are going to be pouring today, or aprons. So we need to get number 4 rebar, which is 1/2 inch, because rebar is an 1/8, so 4/8 is a 1/2 inch. And then we need to put that 1 foot on center. So we will be making a mat inside of here of rebar. We'll have to drill it into the walls. They could have concreted L rebars into the walls, but then that would have caused problems with their forms. They would have had to make holes in their forms so they could stick out. It's just easier to drill them after the fact. Drill a 1/2 inch hole, drive a 1/2 inch rebar in there, and it stays in there. The rebar just keeps this pad and this pit from separating, and also keeps it from going up and down. So George and I are going to get started. We're going to get these forms put in. We got to go 8 foot out, 12 foot across. We'll make those out of 2x8s, and we'll stake those, and we got to put a 3-inch slope on these so that water runs off. So George and I are going to get started. So these are the plans of the building. Here's what, oh, my alarm's going off. Hang on a second. So this is what, darn alarm on my phone. There we go. Sorry. So this is the fertilizer shed. This is the rail. This is the pit that we're working on, and these are going to be the aprons that we're working on today. So train will dump here, trucks will dump here, conveyor will take it up, take it to a cross conveyor, and it'll go across. There's a belt tripper up here that'll trip it into each bunk according to what fertilizer it is. Then over here is our loadout area. The mixer and everything will sit in this pit here, and then in this doorway here, in this alleyway, a little loader will run around and get fertilizer out of these bins, put it in the mixer, and then it'll go into the trucker spreader in the loadout area. All right, George and I are going to get started. So we also have to pour and form up 3 little pads here. This is what the conveyor sits on. And the problem is with some of these prints is they're kind of vague on depth. They don't give us any depth here. They tell us that these are 7 7/8 from the top of the rail down to the top of the pit wall, but they don't tell us how deep these are down in the ground. I don't know why these prints don't have that, but I'm gonna have to find out that depth. And we also got to remember that top of stand pads are the same elevation as finished floor of the mat slab bunker. So that means we also got to remember that we can't shoot off the edge of that because that's tapered out. So we have to go against the wall tight where the elevation is still flat from the pad. So all things you got to keep in mind when you're doing this stuff, because you start shooting off of concrete that's tapered, you're going to end up with a problem on your project that you're working on. So it's all stuff you got to keep in your head the whole time you're working on these projects. So all right, George and I are going to get started. Enough talking, let's make some stuff happen. All right, so George and I are going to start screwing these together. going to check the squareness. $173.5. $174. About 174 and 3/8. Right there. About 174 and a quarter. Check that one time it's closed. That'll work right there. I got it. So George and I are going to do our final setting of the forms. We're going to tap these down now until the laser is satisfied. All right, we're gonna start drilling for some rebar. We got just these. These were probably what was supposed to be concreted in the wall like so, but we're gonna use them to wire our rebar to. So we're going 18 inches on center, but we're gonna start at 6, and our first 18 there. And yeah, I don't have my hard hat on because I'll tell you what, it's hot. There's nothing overhead that's gonna hit me in the head, so I'm not too worried about it. This is actually the first time I've used this drill for this kind of stuff, and I like it. I originally, I was going to use it like a air hammer for driving disc opener bearings in and out, but it didn't work well for that.
Works pretty good.
Works good for what it's intended for, don't it?
Yep.
Okay, so George and I are laying out some rebar now. We got that side put together. We're going to do this side on camera. We're going to end up with foot squares between our rebars. But first, we have to install these, which these are called chairs. These are what rebar sits on. It holds them gapped from the bottom. So I need to cut these in half. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cut the middle. A little tough to cut. I should probably put my high vis back on so nobody runs me over. Since we're in such a well-traveled area over here. That chair in. Now George and I are just kind of doing this off of what we've seen the concrete contractor do. There's a little bit of knowledge here, but we're not concrete guys yet, but we're learning. And there's only one way to learn, and that's to actually do it. So we gotta lay all this out, make a grid pattern basically, and then we have to wire tie it all together, which we have to get some wire ties. That's all laid out. It's all pretty close. We just need some ties. Well, George and I are getting this rebar tied up. So it's pretty simple. You just take this hook tool, you take one of these pre-made wires, you wrap it around, and then you just spin it. Put your rebar where you want it. This rebar's hot. So hot you can barely touch it. So you just turn that, tighten it right up. Alright. Or you break them off. You go too tight with them. That all tied.
come back here, tie some here. Tie one here. I don't know how much you actually have to tie, but we're going to tie quite a bit just so we know it won't move. Like I said, this is kind of my first time of doing this. We're learning. The best way to do it is to learn. The best way to learn is just do it, I guess. Oh, I gotta do that one, yep. Missed one. I got my Pipeliner's cloud umbrella out. I think it's just as hot under it as it is anywhere else. Well, George and I got those rebars all tied up yesterday and got pretty hot, so we headed home for the day. So we come back early this morning. We got started on these piers for the conveyor that loads the fertilizer shed. What we're going to do is these need to be 2 foot thick and 2 foot wide, and there's 3 different widths of them. So, or I should say, I suppose, lengths of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to utilize my Uncle Jamie's concrete forms for basements and crawl spaces. We're going to use them to make our forms out of. So George is ripping down some plywood to make walls to put in the forms, because the forms are going to lay on their side, so we have to screw it in so that we can make our own form. So it's kind of a interesting way to do it, but it'll work just fine. Well, George and I are starting to build forms. We got one together, we're going to build another one. Well, there's our first two forms. We got one more to build. That one's gonna be tricky because it's a little wider than these, or longer than these. Well, we got all our forms set. Everything's leveled up. Everything looks good. It's all lined up where it needs to be. So now we're going to start putting some rebar in them, getting that all wired in, and we're going to get some ties to tie the tops of these together so they don't flex from the weight of the concrete inside and blow them out. And then we'll be done forming. So we're just about there. It is a beautiful day though. It's not hot. It's got a nice breeze going. It's wonderful. Well, there we go. My Uncle Jamie came, brought us all the tie straps to strap these together. We've done the top and bottom. They are ready to pour. So Monday morning we'll be pouring concrete. So I'm going to end this video right here. Thank you for watching. Greatly appreciate it. We'll see you all in the next one. So the next one will be our first concrete pouring on the channel. So that'll be an exciting video. So time to clean up tools and head home for the day and see what we can get into this weekend.